Yo, what is up? We are back with another Lords of the Fallen video. Today we'll be checking out all of the classes. So, yo, what is up? We are back again with another Lords of the Fallen video. Today we'll be checking out all of the classes that have been officially announced or that we know so far. So, yeah, let's jump right into it. And first up, as you see on the screen, we have the Black Feather Ranger, which obviously this is a bow and arrow class, which will be my favorite and probably best class in the game. I don't care. Argue with me down in the comments. All right, so a range archetype with two types of arrows at their disposal. While no slouch in melee range, the Black Feather's best strategy is to begin combat from afar, aiming manually and landing headshots for critical damage. If the ranger does not get into a close range scrap, once the enemy disengages, they can let loose with specialized arrows to trigger debuffs or elemental damage before getting back in and finishing them off with their axe. Their starting gear is an axe, bow, oak arrows, poison arrows, light shield, and medium armor. Stats to focus. Agility is the primary stat for the ranger as it synergizes with the bow's damage. As such, leaning toward more agility-based weapon is the most efficient strategy stats-wise. There's little need to scale into elemental magic as the arrows have elemental types. Raising vitality for extra HP is always a fine idea, especially early game. Note from the developer, picking up targets from afar on the move, landing headshots in this type of melee focused game will always be satisfying, especially landing critical blows. Next up, we have the Condemned. This guy looks just broken. All right, this is a masochistic character, class choice for pain gluttons. The Condemned is a wretched prisoner who has suffered indescribable torment, flimsy and feeble. They make for a very poor starting class. They use their waste buckets from the cells as a melee weapon. Wow. They can throw rocks at their enemies, but that won't achieve much except annoyance. As pitiful as that sounds, if they are fast on their feet, they can make a reasonable progress, albeit paid in blood. Yeah, this guy seems like if you want the hardest playthrough ever, choose this. All right, the starting gear is a broken bucket fist weapon, throwing rocks, and light armor. Stats to focus. The Condemned have the lowest stats in the game, and this makes them quite the dark horse when it comes to builds. They can build absolutely anything early on since level ups will come quickly, and they won't have points invested in stats that they don't need. This is an export class to be sure. All right, next up we have the Dark Crusader, which is available through the deluxe edition, which this is probably the coolest looking class to me, in my opinion, and definitely the second choice of mine. The Dark Crusader is only a starting class in the deluxe edition of Lords of the Fallen and is unlockable later in the game for the standard edition. Alright, so a powerful melee class with radiant powers and a longsword capable of massive sweeps and deadly vertical strikes. The Dark Crusader is indomitable in melee, even more than the Hollow Knight. While lax in the range department, it more than makes up for with an excellent physical protection. The Crusader can charge into enemies wielding a sword in a two-handed stance, performing devastating spins, and few can withstand the onslaught, especially early game. The starting gear is a Crusader Greatsword, Crusader Heavy Armor, and Rosary Catalyst. Stats to focus. Strength will help with the melee damage and keep up with the heavier weapon requirement. Endurance for stamina and carrying capacity, and for maintaining a reasonable encumbrance. And of course, Radiance is to be able to cast more advanced protective spells. Next up, we have the Exiled Stalker. The Exiled Stalker is an advanced class that fits the mold of cunning and stylish rogue. This class wields twin daggers and is best described as a dervish of death. Getting in, chaining hits, and then disengaging in a flash, only to re-engage half a second later, is their specialty. He can also poison weapons like an assassin. I'm assuming they meant he can also wield poison weapons like an assassin. This is an advanced class that requires a lot of precision in execution and mastery of the terrain. As such, it is not recommended for beginners. So this class is going to be for all the, I guess, the really good Souls-like players. All right, the starting gear: 2 daggers, medium stalker armor, throwing daggers, and poison salts. Stats to focus, agility, and endurance to boost stamina and dagger damage, and so you can inflict as much damage as possible before being forced to disengage. This class does not do a lot of posture damage, which means if not careful, they will end up trading hits with enemies. Increasing HP at the early levels is never a bad idea. All right, next up we have Hollow Knight, which is what is it? The Dark Crusader at home. So the Hollow Knight is a classic sword and board archetype who is very versatile with a fast attack rate while also having fairly good armor. Despite how heavy the armor looks, the class is medium encumbered, allowing for decent dashes and rolls. Open to spellcasting from the onset. Starting gear: short sword, knight shield, heavy armor, grenades, healing over time consumable. Stats to focus: ideally vitality and endurance for HP and stamina. Can then go either into agility for halberds and spears or radiance to cast radiant spells. So I assume like radiant spells are probably really good. Next up, we have the Mornstead Infantry. Extremely long melee range with an emphasis on defense, ranged javelin tossing, and being quick on their feet. Despite this class starting off with comparatively low damage, their range capabilities more than make up for those shortcomings. Two-handing the spear opens up massive lunging thrusts and multiple fast pokes. The starting gear is a spear, light shield, heavy armor, throwing javelins, healing over time consumable. Stats to focus: despite the heavy armor, the weapon and shield are fairly light, and alongside the condemned, the Mornstead infantry is free to specialize in anything. Either continue pumping agility to get more damage out of the spear, or raising strength to pick up the early halberds in the hub is also a great idea. Magic can also be easily Magic can also be easily be embraced since their class has decent melee and great range. Next up, we have the Orion Preacher. The pious evangelist of the Orion Church, bestowing the wisdom of warriors one hammer blow at a time. This is meant to be an advanced class for experienced players. While lacking in physical protection by donning robes and a flimsy shield, the preacher more than makes up for that with a tremendous hat. The hammer is weighty and impactful, breaking the will and posture of the heretics, and the starting healing spell grants the preacher unparalleled sustain. Not that they need it, their faith alone will see them through their trials and tribulations. Their starting gear: hammer, light shield, radiant callus, healing radiance, light armor, small mana stone consumable. Set to focus: radiance is a number one priority. Not only does it boost damage of the radiant spells, but also increases mana, vitality, or strength come next in terms of importance, both improving the preacher's survival and melee. Since the radiant spells are less about destructive power and lean more towards buffs and support, that being said, preachers naturally branch into either full-blown ranged spellcasters or the paladin archetype, a heavy melee class drawing upon divine power. All right, next up we have the Partisan. A variant of the Hollow Knight, the Partisan is a Mornstead Knight champion. His starting weapon, a flail, is more specialized and comes along with a crossbow, which gives him quite powerful single target range options, especially compared to the Knight's bombs that focus more on an area of effect. The Partisan style play is meant to be very relentless in their attack, especially given their unripe berries that buff stamina regeneration. The starting gear is a flail, knight shield, crossbow, heavy armor, unripe berries for stamina regen. Stats to focus: the partisan has great defense, so increasing agility to get more out of the flail and endurance to keep the momentum of swings is a great early strategy. As always, early investments in vitality for HP is incredibly useful. All right, next up we have the Pyric Cultist. This guy looks pretty cool. The Pirate Cultist is an advanced class who is a fervent worshiper of Adir. and has sworn to see the natural order of humanity's one true God finally restored. A mage wielding pyromantic spells that engage enemies from afar. That so obviously he's a fire, well, pirate cultist. He's a fire mage. Anyway, a mage wielding pyromantic spells that engage enemies from afar with a very effective fire projectile. They also make good use of the heavy polearm at their disposal when things survive the fire barrage and close in. The staff is particularly effective against groups of enemies, while his initial fire magic is strong against single targets or close group targets. This may seem exceptionally strong, but take heed. The early area features Rogar enemies, and fire spells are not particularly effective against them. The starting gear is Cultist Staff Polearm, Rogar Catalyst, Infernal Orb Spell, Medium Armor, Small Mana Stone, Consumable. Stats to focus. Infernal is the most important stat, boosting spell damage as well as mana. Their armor is quite reasonable, which makes them fairly resistant to physical damage. As such, investing in endurance to maintain a high stamina to keep flinging those spells and dodge out of harm's way is a good first choice. Alternatively, they could branch out, investing heavily into strength to wield the heavy, devastating Rogar weapon that have a high stat requirement as well as weight. And I believe last but not least, Utaranger Warwolf. All out offensive class that focuses on overpowering melee strikes that can stagger foes while still being fast on their feet. Right from the onset, this class has the ability to set their weapon on fire using fire assaults and swing it around like a maniac. Starting gear is a long sword, throwing axe, medium armor, and fire assaults. Stats to focus, strength to increase the melee damage and keep up with the influx of the juicy strength scaling weapons and high strength requirements. Leveling vitality for health is always desirable, especially early game. What class would you start within Lords of the Fallen? Uh, Definitely a ranger. I don't think many people would probably pick a ranger, but let's see it. The Dark Crusader. Yeah, the Dark Crusader is probably cool just off of cool points. That's probably why I won. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe and comment down below what class are you going to be starting with. Are you excited about Lords of the Fallen? If you are, please comment down below if you've played like any type of Souls like game. I have never played a Souls like game, and I think I may make this my first. So yeah. Hope you all enjoy the video. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, and I hope everybody has a great day. Peace.